Are you ready to level up your vocabulary so that you can describe and talk about the weather like a fluent English speaker? In today's lesson, I'll teach you 50 terms that will really help you advance your vocabulary so you're not just saying the same old phrases about the weather, because let's face it, American English speakers love to speak about the weather, and you need to know these advanced ways to do it. Let's go over some general weather terms and idioms, and then we'll get more and more advanced as the lesson goes on. Do you know the difference between talking about the weather forecast versus the weather climate? The forecast is typically what we describe the weather for the next day or the next week as, whereas the climate is what the weather is like generally in a place. The climate is studied over many, many years, and it kind of doesn't matter the season. Maybe for the climate, they'll say they have cold winters and warm summers. But for the forecast, it's very specific. It's saying it will rain on Monday, it will be sunny on Tuesday, whatever it might be.
It's a weather forecast, Helen.
When we use the phrase temperature, we measure in degrees of Fahrenheit in the United States. To be honest, when someone tells me the temperature in Celsius, I have no idea what they're talking about. I'm sure you feel the same if you're used to Celsius and someone says Fahrenheit. But for the United States, we talk about the temperature, the degree of heat or cool in Fahrenheit.
Sub-zero temperatures!
Humidity refers to the amount of moisture that's in the air. So we can talk about a place being either very humid or very dry. A desert would be dry, whereas a jungle is humid.
It's the humidity!
If you watch the weather forecast on television in the United States, the news forecast, they'll talk a lot about cool fronts and warm fronts. They're basically talking about the atmosphere, the way that the air is moving around. So if they say a cool front is coming, that's that cold air that's going to be in your area or in your state if you're living in the United States. And the same thing is for the warm fronts as well. Do you know what dew is? Well, if you're watching the weather forecast, they will have the dew point or the temperature at which dew is formed. Dew is what we call the water droplets that you see in the morning on different surfaces outdoors. It's the water from the air that collects on the surfaces that kind of condenses. We call that dew. So if it's very wet outside in the morning, we can say it's very dewy outside. That's another word that we use to describe the weather condition of everything kind of being wet in the morning. But it hasn't rained, it's the dew that forms on surfaces. We often use the term dewy as well when women want to achieve a sort of makeup look where their face looks a little bit shiny. We can say, you look very dewy. Where I live, we have extremely cold winters, so I like to pay attention in the winter to what the wind chill is. So there's usually a temperature that's given when I open my phone and look at the weather app. Let's say it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's below freezing. Now, sometimes below that temperature, there will be the wind chill, and it will say it actually feels like 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind is so powerful that it actually makes the temperature feel colder than what a thermometer is measuring. We call that the wind chill.
Wind chill -15.
If you are ever in a scientific situation, you'll need to know the word precipitation. This means any sort of moisture that falls from the sky. So rain, sleet, snow, hail, all of those are called precipitation.
Weather. See storms. No precipitation.
When we talk about visibility, we're talking about how far you can see outside on a day. So lots of times if there is fog in the air, that's that kind of steamy looking moisture in the air. It almost looks like there's clouds on the ground. That's what we refer to as fog. But if we say there is low visibility, it means it's not safe to drive a car because you can't see very far. Or if we say there's good visibility, it means it's a very clear day and you can see from a far ways away.
Visibility 0.
Two informal terms that you'll need to know for English weather talk is iffy and dicey. So if we say the weather's kind of iffy today, it means we can't really tell if it's going to storm or rain or be nice outside. Even if we look at the forecast, it might say there's a 50% chance of rain, which doesn't tell us much. It tells us it either will rain or it won't rain where we are. Maybe you're talking to your friend and your friend asks you, would you like to meet up at the park on Saturday? You might say, the weather is looking iffy, so maybe we should plan to meet inside. This means you don't know what the weather is going to do, so you're not going to plan your meetup because it might not be nice outside.
That sounds kind of dicey.
Oh, it's super dicey.
Now, when you say that the weather is dicey, it means the exact same as if any situation is dicey. It means it's kind of uncertain and risky. So maybe there is a storm. Maybe you are living in an area where there's snowstorms, and the storm could get really bad and it could be unsafe to travel. So you'll say, I don't really want to drive anywhere today because the weather is dicey. That just means dangerous and unpredictable. We can describe any storm and having to travel in it or go outside in it as being a dicey situation. It just means risky. Let's get into some more terms about talking about sunny or hot weather. It's very basic just to say it's hot out, it's sunny out. Let's talk about some more ways you can talk about this type of weather. If you want to level up from just saying it's sunny outside, if it's really humid, you can use the word muggy. It's very muggy outside. It can be uncomfortably warm and humid and everything's very damp. Maybe you start sweating instantly when you walk outside. We call this muggy weather in English. And this is definitely a negative way to describe humidity. It's muggy out today.
How's Washington? Muggy.
Again, if you want another term to describe this sticky weather, we can use that term sticky. Sticky just means it's very humid and it makes you sweat almost instantly outside. If you're watching the weather report in the United States, you might hear the weather reporter say there is a heat wave coming. So this is warm air that's going to be surrounding your area for a duration of time. Typically, heat waves last for about a week at the most. And this would be weather that's in the 100-degree Fahrenheit range for that extended period of time. We are in a heat wave right now, is how you might describe that sensation.
This heat wave is a gift.
There are so many ways to say that it is extremely hot outside. You might use boiling, baking, sizzling. Of course, these terms are all kind of kitchen terms you can describe heat with, but you can also use these terms to talk about really hot weather. If you want to be very dramatic about how hot it is outside, maybe you step outside and it feels like the ground that you're walking on might burn you. You can say it is blistering outside, or you could say it's blistering heat outside. It means it's so hot, it feels like it's going to burn your skin. You can also say it's scorching, it's blazing, or it's searing. All of these are good terms to describe extremely hot weather. So now you have a ton of different ways that you'll know when it's extremely hot outside how to describe it. And of course, if you wanted to say that there's no clouds in the sky, you could say it's a very clear day out. Usually we say it's clear when it's nice, warm weather, but it's not scorching or searing or too hot. It's just a nice, clear day. The great news is now you know tons of terms to describe hot weather, and I'm going to teach you just as many to describe cool or cold weather. The most common word we use when it's really cold out is we just say it's freezing outside. And it doesn't literally have to be freezing temperatures, but we just say that when we feel very cold. If you live in the United States, you might experience summer transitioning into fall and then winter. When you have hot weather for a long time and then all of a sudden the weather gets cold, it feels even colder than it actually is. It is freezing outside.
It's freezing.
If you want to say it's slightly cold or chilly, just a little bit uncomfortable, you could say, ooh, it's nippy outside. Especially in the morning time during the fall and the winter, we say it is nippy out today. That means it's just cold or cool in the morning, but not extremely cold.
In Bavaria, it's nippy.
When we experience frost on the ground outside, that's the white, icy substance that gathers on grass and trees and roofs. We say it's frost outside, or we say it's frosty outside. This just means there's that little bit of ice. It's definitely not snow, and it's typically only in the morning if it's frosty outside. If you've ever heard of frostbite, this is an injury that you get from being exposed to cold temperatures for too long. If it is extremely cold where you are in the United States and you are outside with no gloves, you are at risk of getting frostbite on your fingers. And this could be very dangerous. People even lose fingers to frostbite, so be careful.
Frostbite in July.
If it is below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, we say it is sub-zero temperatures. In the coldest parts of the United States, there are sub-zero temperatures quite frequently in the winter.
I mean, that's why God created sub-zero winters.
And where I live, occasionally we get this type of weather that's called an Arctic blast. I think this term is a bit newer, and I don't know if it's necessarily scientific, but it just means that the cold air from north, from the Arctic, has traveled down to where we are, making it extremely, extremely cold and icy. It's just the coldest air you can kind of picture in the winter. We call that an Arctic blast. If it's not that cold out, you will hear us say it's a little chilly out today. It just means it's slightly uncomfortable. You might need a sweater or a light jacket. It's chilly.
Chilly.
Brisk and crisp are used in similar ways in English when we want to say it's kind of refreshingly cool outside, especially if it's been hot for a long time and then you go outside in the morning and it's starting to have, cooler air. It kind of feels good to have cooler air. You say, oh, it's so brisk out, or it's very crisp out this morning. This just means cool air, but that's also refreshing and not so cold where you feel freezing. And finally, we say windy to describe weather with lots of strong wind, but we can also say breezy as well. It's breezy out today. Breezy is typically used as a positive term to describe a nice breeze or wind outside. Now let me teach you how to describe rainy or wet weather. A light rain with small drops, the kind of rain that you can walk outside in and you're getting a little bit wet but not completely soaked. We call this a drizzle, a soft drizzle.
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 And we use drizzle in the kitchen when we're talking about putting a little bit of sauce over maybe a pastry, or we're drizzling a piece of meat with sauce. It means we're just lightly putting sauce in a line across something in the kitchen. So you can use drizzle to describe that light rain, or you can use it in the kitchen as well. We talk about rain being a shower. We use the term shower when it's just a brief period of time. So if it's raining all day, we wouldn't say, oh, we had a rain shower today. That would just be a rainy day in general. Now, if you're outside and all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's sunny out, but then also rain clouds move in and it rains for about half an hour, you can say, oh, we just had a shower this afternoon outside. So people would not think that you wash yourself. They would understand in English that just meant a short period of rain. And oftentimes I hear weather reporters call those pop-up showers, meaning they come out of nowhere. Even if the weather says it's going to be nice, it showers or rains for a really brief period of time. Now, when you're outside and it starts raining extremely heavily on you, you could say it's raining cats and dogs. That's a very old idiom, and we don't actually use that often. We usually just say it is a complete downpour, or it's a downpour outside. This is the most common way in American English. I know there's a ton of different idioms, but I think a lot of the idioms describing rain are outdated or not used as frequently as they are taught. But I would just say it's a downpour outside if it's raining very heavily.
It was a downpour.
And then if you want to take it up a notch even more, it's even more rain. You can say it's a torrential downpour. This is a term that describes the most extreme amount of rain.
It is going to bring winds and it is going to bring torrential rains.
If you want to say that you got rained on and all of your clothing and your hair is wet, you can say we got drenched outside. So to get drenched means to get rained on very heavily. Or if you jumped into a pool and you came out of the pool with your clothes on, you could say my clothes are drenched. Or if your house got flooded, you could say everything is wet. It is completely drenched in my house. This means very wet. Everything is soaked with water. If you want to say that it's cloudy outside, you're not talking about it raining, but there's no sunshine. You can say it is overcast today. Kind of a gloomy day. It's very overcast. This means clouds are covering the sky where you are. When we want to talk about rain that kind of makes a fog, that's like that cloudy feeling in the air, You can say it's really just misting outside. That's the lightest amount of rain that just makes it hard to see. Again, we go back to that term low visibility. It's misty out, it's misting, it's foggy. These are all very similar terms.
It's foggy.
If we're talking about rain, we definitely should use the word accumulate. So accumulate is an advanced English word you can use in other contexts besides weather, but it just means that something is gathering or building up. So if there's water on the ground, you could say the water is accumulating. There's water everywhere. Or oftentimes, if snow is not melting when it falls, it starts building up. We can say the snow is accumulating. It means that it's actually building up on the ground. And when there's small pools of water everywhere, we call those puddles. The term is puddle. There are puddles everywhere. The puddles are very deep if it rains a lot. You don't want to step in a puddle. And of course, if the water is uncontrollable outside and it's accumulating a lot, it feels like all of a sudden there's a river, we can call that a flood. Or if you are in a mountain area, sometimes flash floods happen, which means it's very dry and all of a sudden water comes out of nowhere, and it can be a very dangerous situation if there is a flash flood. So if you ever see a warning for flash flooding, make sure to get to high ground or get to a safe place and never drive through a flash flood because the water can be very deep and dangerous. Let's talk about how you can describe stormy or windy weather. We use the term thunderstorm to describe a storm that has thunder, which is like the very loud noise that's produced by the clouds, lightning or lightning strikes, and really heavy winds. So that's what we call a thunderstorm. Sometimes you'll see on your weather report that there is a thunderstorm warning. This means that there is going to be a thunderstorm. They're warning you. If there's a thunderstorm watch, it means there could be a thunderstorm. There's the type of weather that typically produces one, but they do not see one yet. So that's the difference if you are looking at your weather report and there's a thunderstorm warning. That means very dangerous, or a watch. That means just watch out. It's not for sure yet. The same goes for if you ever are in the United States and you see a tornado warning or a tornado watch. You need to be careful if it says tornado warning. That's when you need to take some shelter and some precautions for the storm. We can use the term gusting to describe winds that are very strong. We often say wind gusts. We can say wind gusts of 50 miles per hour. These would be really strong winds. And if you're ever in a really bad storm, they can be even stronger than this. For instance, if you are in a hurricane, this is a tropical storm that starts out in the ocean, and then usually hurricanes make landfall. So that means it's when it starts to affect people that live on the coast areas or near the ocean. They have gusting winds, and they have gusting winds of up to 100 miles per hour, which can be so dangerous and so devastating. So if you live in the United States, especially if you live in Florida or anywhere on the East Coast, you will often experience hurricane weather. Hurricane! When we talk about the spinning weather pattern that's like a hurricane or a tornado, we can call that weather a cyclone. So it's anything that spins in weather is what we call a cyclone.
It's been destroyed by cyclone winds.
And again, if you have never experienced it, a tornado is when there is violent spinning weather. You will almost see the funnel-like weather in a tornado. You've probably seen videos of it online if there's not tornadoes where you live.
Tornado!
Tornado!
Finally, we talk about a gust, meaning the wind that comes, a gust of wind, or we can say it's a gust right now. Or we have hail, which means that small ice pellets are falling out of the sky. And sometimes, as you know, hail can be very big. It can be as big as golf balls outside. Thank you for learning advanced weather vocabulary with me. If you want to learn more vocabulary just like this, check out the next 2 videos on screen that I've put for you. It will help you advance your English and sound more like a fluent English speaker. I'll see you guys in the next video, and make sure to check out EnglishWithKayla.com. Goodbye!